What happens when a grandfather stands at the door, tears in his eyes, carrying years of regret? Can the wounds of yesterday heal through the innocence of a child's love? Today we witness a moment that will change everything for Huyen's family. Stay with us to see forgiveness unfold in the most unexpected way. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Ly Tu Huyen's modest home, casting gentle light across the wooden floor. Maya sat at the small table, her tiny hands wrapped around a bowl of warm rice porridge, her laughter filling the air as Ly made funny faces to encourage her to eat. Huyen stood by the stove, stirring a pot of herbal tea, a soft smile playing on her lips as she watched the two people she loved most in the world. This was their morning ritual, their moment of peace before the day's work began. Day would head to the docks, Huyen would tend to their small garden, and Maya would play among the mountain flowers. Life had found its rhythm, gentle and predictable, after so many storms. Then came the knock. It wasn't the casual tap of a neighbor or the cheerful greeting of a friend. This knock was hesitant, almost apologetic, as if the person behind the door wasn't sure they deserved to be there. Huyen's hand froze mid-stir, her body tensing at the unfamiliar sound. Day looked up from Maya, his protective instincts immediately alert. "I'll get it," Huyen whispered, though her voice trembled slightly. She wiped her hands on her apron and moved toward the door, her heart beginning to race with an inexplicable anxiety. When she opened the door, the world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Standing there, weathered and gray but unmistakably familiar, was her former father-in-law, the man who had raised Thuk, the man who had been away working when she and Maya were cast out into the cold. His face was lined with age and something deeper, a profound sadness that seemed to have carved itself into every wrinkle. "Huyen," he said softly, his voice breaking on her name. She couldn't speak. Her throat closed, her hands gripped the doorframe, and for a moment, she was transported back to that terrible day when his wife had screamed at her to leave, when Maya had cried in her arms, when they had walked away from the only home her daughter had ever known. Ly appeared behind Huyen, his presence solid and reassuring. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, and she felt his strength flowing into her. "Can we help you?" Ly asked, his tone respectful but cautious, making it clear that Huyen was under his protection now. The old man's eyes moved from Huyen to Day, taking in the scene. The modest but loving home. The man who stood protectively beside the woman he had once known as his daughter-in-law. Then his gaze fell to the floor, shame washing over his features. Before anyone could speak further, a small voice rang out with pure joy. "Grandpa!" Maya had spotted him from the table. She jumped down Faye from her chair and ran toward the door, her little feet padding across the floor, her face lit with innocent delight. She had always loved her grandfather during the brief time they had lived together. To her young mind, he was simply the kind man who had once lifted her high in the air and brought her sweet treats from the market. The old man's composure shattered. He knelt down as Maya reached him, and she threw her small arms around his neck. His shoulders shook as he held her, tears streaming down his weathered face, falling into her dark hair. "My little flower," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "How you've grown." Huyen watched this reunion, her own eyes filling with tears. The complexity of emotions swirling through her was almost unbearable. Pain, anger, confusion, but also compassion. This man had never been cruel to her. He had simply been absent when cruelty was done in his name. Ly squeezed Huyen's shoulder gently. The silent message was clear. "Whatever you decide, I'm here with you." The morning's peace had been broken, but perhaps something else was about to begin. Something that none of them had expected when the sun rose that day. "Please," the old man said, finally finding his voice as he stood up, still holding Maya's hand. "I need to speak with you, Huyen. I need to tell you what I've learned." Huyen nodded slowly, stepping back to allow him entry. Day guided them to the small sitting area, and they all sat down. The old man on one side, Huyen and Day together on the other, with Maya climbing into Huyen's lap. Sensing the seriousness of the moment, even if she didn't understand it, the old man's hands trembled as he clasped them together. He looked at Huyen, and in his eyes, she saw genuine anguish. "I came home 3 days ago," he began, his voice heavy with pain. "I had been working in the city for nearly 2 years, sending money back, believing that you and Maya had abandoned us. That's what my wife told me, that you had grown tired of waiting for Thuk, that you had taken Maya and left without a word." Huyen's breath caught. The lie had been so complete, so carefully maintained. "I believed her," he continued, his voice breaking. "I was angry with you. Every day I thought about my granddaughter growing up somewhere without me, and I blamed you for taking her away. I sent letters that were never answered. I called, but my wife said you had cut off all contact. I thought you had poisoned Maya's mind against us." Day's hand found Huyen's, their fingers intertwining. She needed that anchor as memories of those desperate days came flooding back. The rain-soaked nights in broken shelters, Maya crying from hunger, the overwhelming fear that they wouldn't survive. 3 nights ago, I heard my wife talking in her sleep," the old man said, tears now flowing freely down his face. "She was having a nightmare, and in it she was arguing with someone. She kept saying, I had to do it. I had to make her leave. She wasn't good enough for our family." I woke her up, confused, and demanded to know what she meant. The room was silent except for his broken words, and Maya's soft breathing as she nestled against her mother. At first, she tried to deny it, to make up more lies, but I wouldn't let it go. Finally, she confessed everything. She told me that the day after I left for the city, she had driven you out. She said you weren't worthy of our home, that you were just a burden with a fatherless child. She threw you out with nothing, and then she lied to me for 2 years about what happened. Huyen closed her eyes, feeling the weight of those words. The truth was finally spoken aloud, validated by someone who mattered. "I couldn't sleep that night or any night since," he continued. "I kept thinking about you and this precious child, alone, homeless, struggling to survive. I thought about the cold season, the rain, the hunger you must have faced, and I thought about how I had cursed your name, believing you were the cruel one when all along." His voice failed him completely. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. "I'm so sorry, Huyen. I'm so deeply, terribly sorry. I should have been there. I should have protected you and Maya. You were family, and we failed you in the worst possible way." Huyen felt her own tears falling. Part of her wanted to hold on to the anger, to make him understand just how terrifying those months had been. But another part of her, the part that had been healed by Dee's love, that had learned to hope again, recognized the genuine remorse before her. "I don't expect you to forgive me," the old man said, looking up at her with red-rimmed eyes. "I know what my wife did, what I failed to prevent, is unforgivable. But I had to come here. I had to tell you that I know the truth now. I had to tell you that I never stopped loving this little one." He gestured to Maya, his hand shaking. "And I had to tell you that you deserved so much better than what our family gave you." Dee spoke for the first time since they had sat down. "What you did by coming here, by seeking the truth, by apologizing, that takes courage. Many people would have chosen to believe the comfortable lie." The old man looked at Day with gratitude for those words, then turned back to Huyen. "I've left my wife," he said quietly. "I cannot live with someone who could do such a thing and feel no remorse. But Huyen, I'm here to ask you something, though I have no right to ask anything of you." Huyen waited, her heart pounding. May I be a part of Maya's life? May I be the grandfather I should have been all along? The question hung in the air like morning mist over the mountains. Huyen looked down at Maya, who was watching her grandfather with wide, trusting eyes. The little girl had no memory of that terrible day, no understanding of the pain that had passed. To her, this was simply her grandfather, the man who had once made her giggle, who had sung her songs, who represented a connection to a part of her identity she barely knew. Huyen felt Dee's hand squeeze hers gently, a silent reminder that whatever she decided, he would support her. There was no pressure in his touch, only love and trust in her judgment. This was her choice to make, her past to reconcile with, her healing to pursue. She thought about the woman she had been when she first met Dee. Broken, desperate, filled with bitterness toward those who had wronged her. She thought about how Day had never asked her to forget her pain, but had simply shown her that there could be more to life than suffering. He had taught her, through his actions rather than his words, that choosing kindness didn't make you weak. It made you free. Do you remember, Huyen began softly, the day before you left for the city? You bought Maya a small wooden bird from the market. She carried it everywhere until it broke. The old man's face crumpled with memory and emotion. I remember. She loved that bird. She cried for 3 days when it broke. Huyen continued, her voice steady despite her tears. Not because the toy was gone, but because she said it was a gift from you. Even in those terrible months after we were thrown out, even when we had nothing, she kept the pieces of that broken bird. She would tell me stories about her grandfather, who loved her. The old man covered his mouth with his hand, overcome with emotion. You weren't there when we needed you, Huyen said, and the words were honest but not cruel. You believed lies instead of searching for truth. Those are facts, and they caused us real pain. But you're here now. You've learned the truth. You've left behind the person who caused this harm, and you're asking, not demanding, to make amends. She paused, gathering her thoughts, feeling the weight of this moment. I've learned something important in the time since we lost everything. I've learned that holding on to anger only makes you carry a heavier burden. Dee taught me that. She glanced at Day with such love that it made the old man's eyes fill with fresh tears. He showed me that good people exist, that families can be built on kindness rather than blood, and that everyone deserves a chance to be better than their worst moments. Huyen shifted Maya in her lap, looking directly into the old man's eyes. You may visit Maya whenever you wish. She needs to know her grandfather. She needs to know where she comes from. And despite everything, I believe you love her. I do, he whispered. More than I can express, but understand this, Huyen continued, her voice taking on a firmer tone. Day is her father now. He has earned that role through love, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication. He was there when no one else was. That will never change. I understand completely, the old man said quickly. I would never presume to replace the man who saved you both. I only want to be a grandfather to her, to give her what little I can offer. Dee spoke up, his voice warm and generous. Please, come inside properly. Let me make tea. We can discuss how this will work, what boundaries we need, and how we move forward together. For Maya's sake, the old man looked at Day with profound respect and gratitude. You're a better man than I deserve to meet. We're all just trying to do right by this little one, Dee replied, reaching over to ruffle Maya's hair. She giggled and reached for her grandfather's hand. As Maya bridged the distance between them, her small hand connecting the past and the present, something beautiful emerged from the ashes of old pain. It wasn't about forgetting what happened or pretending the hurt never existed. It was about choosing to build something new, something better, on the foundation of truth and genuine remorse. The old man stood and bowed deeply to both Huyen and Dae. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve. I promise I will spend the rest of my days being worthy of this gift." Maya, oblivious to the profound nature of what was happening, tugged on his hand. "Grandpa, do you want to see my garden? Dee and Mama made it for me," as the old man allowed himself to be led outside by his granddaughter. As Huyen and Dae watched from the doorway with their arms around each other, something shifted in the mountain air. Forgiveness had been given and received. A child's future had been enriched, and a family, though unconventional and born from pain, had found a way to expand its circle of love. Sometimes the greatest strength we can show isn't in holding on to our anger, but in choosing to let it go. Today we witness something profound. A grandfather's genuine remorse, a mother's incredible courage to forgive, and a family's decision to put a child's well-being above past pain. Huyen could have turned him away. She had every right to protect herself and Maya from anyone connected to those dark days. But she chose something harder and braver. She chose compassion. Not because she forgot what happened, but because she understood that Maya deserved to know her grandfather, and he deserved a chance to make amends. This is what true family looks like. Not perfect people who never hurt each other, but imperfect people who choose to forgive, to grow, and to build something better together. Dae and Huyen continue to show us that love isn't just about romance. It's about creating a circle of care wide enough to include even those who once caused pain when they show genuine change. Thank you for joining us on Life Single today. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between holding on to anger or choosing forgiveness? We'd love to hear your story. Until next time, remember that every sunrise offers a chance for redemption.